supremely sensitive like yourself. I was called because Irish Catholics, you see, my nan read the tea leaves and, a very psychic, and I was known then, I was born psychic, whatever that means. But I see it in a different way now because I couldn't really cope with what I considered to be a terrifying and sort of harmful world. I developed a lot of skills which were basically hyper-vigilant coping strategies. So I was on the lookout all the time, and I could be looking at you, listening to a conversation at the same time, just in case they were going to get me, So in that regard, and a lot of sensitives don't like this, I became a manipulator and are very, very good at regulating and controlling other people's behavior in order for me to feel okay.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. This is Kathy Mason from Mason Works Marketing on For Soul Illumination, the new show that helps you learn more about your soul and your soul connection with my friend, Dr. Joe Delaney. Hi, Dr. Joe.
Hi, Kathy. How's it going?
Wonderful, wonderful. So I am so excited to talk to Dr. Joe again. I've talked to him a couple years ago, I think. And he's a scientist, a shaman, a showman, and a scoundrel. He's the creator of the I Am approach to health and well-being. And I'm so excited to find out, as a authority in lifestyle, wellness, and best ways to navigate these changing times, how you are doing right now. And then I'll start asking you some questions. So how are you doing?
Yeah, I feel fine. I feel great. Got a few physical things going on that are being sorted out at the moment. But day at a time, step at a time, breath by breath, I'm just sort of allowing it to sort of sort itself out in a way.
Yeah.
And because I work in the field of medicine, I'm not fighting anybody or anything because I think there's a place, there's a balance point that I feel that I've got to get to. And I don't turn my back on anything at all that I feel will help me and other people. So I'm not one of these to say, oh, keep away from medicine, I'm not one of those. I gave up fighting a long time ago. And in next week, it'll be 32 years since I've had a drink of alcohol or any other mind-altering substance in order to regulate my emotional state. Because Kathy, as you probably remember from our last conversation, I basically lost everything because of the drink. And I tried to take my own life a few times, which was unsuccessful. And I see that as part of the soul's journey, or my particular soul's journey. So that sort of reintroduced me to how it should be. And over the last 30 odd years, I've been letting go of what I'm not in order to try and find out who I am. Sounds quite good, this. I'll have to play this back and listen to what I've just said, basically.
Well, that's what I love about you, is that somehow you are educating people and connecting the dots for people in a kind of upbeat way. You have a sense of humor, and you're not professorial, which you could easily be. You could really be, now class, this is how to do everything. Yeah. But instead you kind of poke fun of that at that. I know everything that there ever was to know. And you kind of combated it from the heart. So my first question is, what is your definition of soul?
Easy. Source of unconditional love. Soul. And that's what it stands for to me. It's something that emerges from within me. It's a strange thing, because I think at first it felt like it was outside of me. And as things go on, it seems like it's sort of infiltrating and then starting to come through every cell. And I think that's the healing, or not necessarily healing, but progressive aspect of expanding consciousness, really. And the more I sort of let go and stop trying to work everything out, it seems to happen more quickly, really. So I think I surrendered, as I say, 32 years ago, and my thinking started to change completely. I was almost guided rather than from a head down perspective. It's more like an emerging thing that comes up, you know. And I think for me, that's the difference between imagination and envisioning. I think what happens is a vision emerges. It's not something I've made up with my head. It's almost like being fed from a different place. And I try and follow that vision and that feeling now. And I allow that to make my choices for me. It's not something outside of myself. It's something that's emerging from deep within me. And whether that be another aspect of mind or a non-local mind, I don't get into all that really. I just go with how I feel and go from there. I don't know whether that's made any sense, but
yes, it did. Well, okay, so as you've been doing all this changing, you're married, you have a prestigious job. How do you balance all of that? Because before we came on, we were talking about the energy changes. I mean, it's just been years of this. Seriously, that you can either be riding it like a surfboard, or you can be crashed with it. So how does that work with your family? Is your wife very spiritual too? And that's, how wonderful.
yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, I wasn't gonna, you know, I've been married before, and I wasn't. That was it. I was finished with relationships, finished with women and stuff like that, you know. And then kapow, round came the corner. Catherine came around the corner, and it was kapow, really, you know. And my wife is, she's very sort of private. She doesn't do people, but she does animals and plants, you know. And you know, if she never saw another human being, in fact, I don't know how I get away with it, you know, but if she never saw another human being, she wouldn't be bothered, as long as she could look after plants, look after, you know. And she works with a lot of energy. She uses a pendulum, and our house is full of big green plants that are all over the place. And all she does is holds the pendulum in her mind or through her heart. She asks, do you need water today? And it'll go one way. Do you need, you know, what else? Do you need feeding? And it'll go another way. And, you know, she's got green fingers, but she's got a big green heart, you know. Really. And so I was guided. There's no doubt about it that this intuitive, innate intelligence picked us to be together. And, you know, there's no doubt about it. We are soul mates. And I think we're complete polar opposites. And she's not really interested in anything I do, and I'm not particularly interested in anything she does. However, in the middle, we both help one another to try and move forward.
Isn't that wonderful? That's so wonderful. So when you talk about soul and soulmates, okay, so soul, your definition is pretty clear and quite expanded. And then when you talk about soulmates, how do you think that all works?
Yeah, I think it's I think I look at yin and yang, and I look at the sort of the bipolarity of it, and I look at the electromagnetic spectrum. People they're talking about electromagnetism, but I see that the from a yin and yang and a feminine and a masculine point of view, not male and female, but feminine and masculine. It's important that I say that. Within all of us, we have a masculine and feminine component. The masculine is the electrical side. The feminine is magnetism. These two work together, right? Always working together in a dynamic way. If they're balanced, then they reach this sort of a neutral 0 point where logic and mind and thinking stops, but awareness expands, really, you know. And that's what happened to me and I think what happens is our soul and the two aspects of the soul, the animus and the anima, they work together in order to try and get closer and closer and closer. And I think what some people would call that expanding in God consciousness or cosmic consciousness or whatever. However, what I've realized is that the soul, it attracts to itself the lesson that it needs to learn next through this human vessel. You know, so every single day it will set up the scene and the players and the actors and the smells and the sights and the sounds in order for us to take actions in that day to expand our consciousness. I don't know whether that makes sense, but it's almost like I don't do the balancing. The way I can feel, if I'm out of balance, I feel emotionally disturbed or blocked. So if I'm open and flowing, I just keep going with it now, not needing to know, just going with the feeling. The hardest part to do is to let go of any expectations whatsoever and just trust the process.
So, okay, you said so many things I could have questions about. That was fantastic. Well, so what we are doing right now is we are post the lockdown, and we're in I'm in the US, you are in England, and we're in a election year, which is horrible. And so the contrast, the stress button has not ever, the finger's been on this, the proverbial stress finger has been on everyone here. Well, and probably internationally too. What do you see is the benefit? Because everything here is for the highest good of all in some way, even though it may not be understandable. What do you think is the benefit of this compression that we've been in?
Well, I think it's all to do with individual self-actualization and self-mastery, really. And I think that the energy that's coming in now, this Christ consciousness, if you like, is really about the heart and the power of the heart. And I think over time, eons of time, for some reason, we've allowed the masculine component or the patriarchal side of the group soul, if you like, to have its own way. But I think if you go back to the Vedic sciences and yoga, they talk about things called cycles of change. And we're coming into a new one now. We're coming out of what's called the age of Kali, which is about the lowest that humanity can go. And I think if we look out there, that's probably about where we're up to at the moment.
Yeah.
But this great big wave now, this great big shift in consciousness that's coming in is a cleansing, recalibrating energy, right? And I think what it's doing is it's bringing with it, and it's associated in my feeling with a sacred feminine energy now. So it's not like a competition. It's just time now for the sacred energy to come in a compassionate, understanding, wise and nurturing way. So there's a great big wave of forgiveness here. And that's difficult when you've been hurt by things, to allow forgiveness. But I understand now that forgiveness is you actually take the hook out of you and let the other side get on with it, really. So in a way, we don't really forgive anybody else. We just allow the hook to come out of us so that we're free of that connection then. I don't know whether that's answered the question, but in short, I see that it's all about the soul's continuous journey, and it's about human self-actualization. A bit like what Maslow and Carl Rogers and all these sorts of people, they were all about enhancing human potential by surrendering to this innate intelligence within all of us.
Right. Well, that's what, when you brought up Maslow, the self-actualization at the top of the pyramid, we're seeing these two pyramids, the patriarchal pyramid, where it's all top down, and then we're seeing that Maslow put consciousness on a top up pyramid, and that it's almost like we're being compressed like a diamond is right now, to see what's really important, see what's really available, because you have to be self-reliant at a certain point. It's an inside process. Are you seeing that? Because I see you as a bridge from academia, from traditional authority, I guess, because of you being a doctor, from an academic. How do you see your role as a bridge for these people that are starting to become the diamond? Because I think, and I've been saying for years, and I don't know where I got it, that this time period is going to, the first step for most humans is going to be that we become empathic. If we haven't already been super sensitive, like me, and you, and that's how we coped. We coped any way we could with that. Mostly I wore a costume to hide it. But this empathy and this change, how, number one, how do you see yourself as a bridge for those people waking up? And then we'll talk about empathy after that.
Yeah, I see myself as a bridge by sharing my experience, my strength, and my hope about my personal journey, really. Because I mean, I went through hell. I've lived that. I've been in all sorts of situations that probably couldn't be any worse. And I've been through very violent situations, and I've also had a lot of violence done to me and stuff. All those things. So it depends on who I'm talking to, really. And it's almost like I'm guided to say certain things which resonate with people. But I think more than anything else is, and this is a hard pill to swallow, use a medical type terminology thing. Hard pill to swallow is that I feel that everybody has got to hit their own particular rock bottom. And that's when the compression stops. I think we've got to be compressed enough to get enough energy to actually drill a hole into the next dimension. I think that's the quantum leap, but it needs a lot of pressure in order for the electron to jump out of one orbital to the next. And I think that's how I see it, really. And the thing about it is, I think that my job is to help people towards their rock bottom, and we can actually say, this is what happened to me. So, and they say, well, how do I do it then? You basically have to surrender all your old ideas, all emotions, all attitudes, the very formative forces of your life up to now. You've got to let go of all of that. And you've got to breathe like this. So it's breathing so important, and use a positive emotion and just work one day at a time. And that's how I try and help people, really. And I try and bring in Maslow's hierarchy of needs to show them where people are stuck on that actual triangle or whatever. So really just by opening my heart up, opening me gob, that's a mouth for anybody who's not in the UK, open me gob, see what comes out. And Kathy, it seems to work, really. As long as I'm not editing and trying to play a game with them, I just say, well, this is what I feel, this is what I think. And what do you think about that then?
Oh, I think that sounds great. And I think that that's so unusual for people, most people that are in the professional arts. They've earned their stripes. And so a lot of times they're still going to have to be the authority rather than the compassionate observer and listener and uplifter. Not to say everyone's like that, but that's kind of the difference between science and spirituality, where it's now finally it started to, instead of being totally separate, it's finally getting to a place where I believe almost everything that's important is about relationship. A relationship with yourself and relationship with others. And your job is relationship with others. It's to how to let them know you're coming from here and that they're loved no matter what.
Yeah, I just think that they feel it, they intuitively feel it. I'm not going out to say I'm opening my heart and I'm sending you love and light and all that, that's not my cup of tea, that really. I just go along with no expectations. They'll ask me a question, I'll answer it honestly, whether they like it or not. And sometimes, because the sword of truth cuts both ways, it might remove a few limbs before you get the message, but sometimes, I have to punch with love, but that's what it feels like sometimes, and people are shocked with it, but I don't really look for any expectation. Like, have they just been healed through that conversation and all that, I come away, and when I come away from people, I think, I wonder what that was all about.
Well, see, that's when you're really bringing in a higher perspective, and you might not even remember. A lot of times I don't even remember what I said. So and that is just fine, as long as actually I kind of prep before I meet with somebody if I think that's going to happen, and make sure that I'm connected to up so that oops, because you can't say everything you think. And
No. I mean, when if ever I do a list of I'm going to talk about this, I never talk about any of it on there. Because I just say, I mean, I do say I'm not a religious person. I've been religion. For me, if it works for you, that's great. Makes you a happier, healthier, and more friendly person. Keep going, But for me, I've dispensed with all those labels and things. I just work from a feeling. I'm hoping to write a book. It's a rude book. It's called The F-Off Approach to Health and Happiness. And F-Off stands for focus on feelings first.
Oh, really?
Right? Yeah. And I know it's on the cards, but just at the moment it hasn't manifested, but it will do. And when I tell my professional colleagues, oh, you can't do that. What about your reputation? I haven't got a reputation,
That's right.
And the normal people, Kathy, they laugh and think that's a great idea, that, so I'm going to go with that.
Yeah, well, I always, because of always seeing a bigger picture since I was a little girl, I always, when under my breath, I say, well, you'll find out. You may not know right now, but you'll find out. And hopefully they will. So, okay, so the next question was about being an empath, because obviously your journey has a lot to do with you trying to deal with being highly sensitive and not having the skills in order to manage your environment. And it sounds like it was a pretty rough upbringing. So can you talk a little bit about what you're seeing? Because Sensitive's health and wellness is, I mean, you're an expert on it. You have a path for people. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Certainly, yeah. I was born supremely sensitive, like yourself. I was called because Irish Catholics, you see, my nan read the tea leaves and, very psychic, and I was known then, I was born psychic, whatever that means. But I see it in a different way now because I couldn't really cope with what I considered to be a terrifying and so harmful world. I developed a lot of skills, which were basically hyper-vigilant coping strategies. So I was on the lookout all the time, and I could be looking at you, listening to a conversation at the same time, just in case they were going to get me, So in that regard, and a lot of sensitives don't like this, I became a manipulator and are very, very good at regulating and controlling other people's behavior in order for me to feel okay.
Yeah.
So, that's it. And I realize now it wasn't so much to do with psychic. It was more in the sort of service of the ego, right? And I think I had to develop those sensitivities to that focus in order to get to a point to realize that there's skills and gifts that when we surrender, we can use them in the service of something deeper and higher then. So I think, and that's when I think that your so-called psychic sensitivities come online then, because ESP to me means expanded sensory perception. And, the sixth sense to me is a sense of humor, right? Because I'd completely and utterly lost my sense of humor, right? In trying to be clever, knowledgeable, responsible, and all that sort of thing. I lost myself. I lost the connection with my soul. And that's why I had to go through. And that hitting rock bottom, I think that's sort of like, it's like a crucifixion point that I think everybody's got to come to, where they go, why hast thou forsaken me? And surrender. And then the sort of spiritual reawakening occurs then. And I think that's what we're going through. We're going through a mass awakening on the planet. But my feeling is, and this is just my viewpoint, if we keep jumping in to help people to do what they've got to do for themselves, it's disabling, really. So sometimes we have to pull the rug from under their feet, let them hit their rock bottom, and then keep an eye on them then, and just then encourage them to go forward to overcome fear one step at a time. I've become a preacher all of a sudden.
Yes, that sounds great. Okay, so I have a question about that then. So when I see that, and we could talk for hours, obviously. When I see someone else and struggling, and I'm just supposed to watch and I'm not supposed to interfere. I'm not supposed to use my energy or capabilities to change it. I assume that there's a lesson. I wouldn't even be seeing it unless either I still had stuff with it that was wanting to, it's not a trigger necessarily, but it's a lesson. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, totally, totally. And if we don't know what to do, it's easy. I was told this: if you've got that thought coming in and that one opposites, and you don't know what to do, take them both, put them into your heart, and ask your heart, "Show me what I need to do here, please." Right? And therefore, we don't make the choice. Then the choice is made for us. But then we can say, "Okay, I see what I need." It's called, to me, it's called detaching with love, and that's why sometimes, when I'm walking past somebody and there's a beggar who's obviously going through hell and he looks like he hasn't eaten for ages and stuff like that, I say to my heart, do I give this person some money or do I keep going? And on some occasions, I'll get a feeling is keep going, right? And on some occasions, I'll put my hand in and maybe take £10 out and give it to him as well. So I allow my intuition to guide me from one moment at a time. And therefore, then there's no cognitive dissonance then, because I'm allowing, if you like, the spiritual side of my nature to make the choices for me. Because I don't know the circumstances. I might be keeping him away from the pain he needs to feel to get that, hang on a second, I need to do something different.
Well, sometimes I've done a lot of interviews and I'm a volunteer for the IONS group, which is the International Association for Near-Death Studies. And so I've interviewed a lot of near-death experiencers, and many of them really had terrible physical outcomes from their experience, but then they came back. So do I stay or do I go kind of conversation goes. Yeah. And I've always said, because I had spiritually transformative experiences instead of the physical, it was like, thank goodness I didn't have to have a car accident or I didn't have to mangle myself. But what you're saying is that even those spiritually transformative experiences where I had to discard all that I thought I was or find truth in what love and value really is here for me. Those were pivots without going totally rock bottom, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. And I think that there's different spheres of consciousness. And depending on what sphere we're in and where we're learning, will be different experiences. Some could be deeply physical, some may be emotional. So, there's so many different things. Some may be sort of cognitive in that we need to see something clearly. So one of the biggest transformations that happened for me is I went from a knowledgeable idiot knowing everything, right, to basically knowing nothing at all. And that's the best place to be. Is I don't know. People say to me, what should I do next? And I'll say, I don't even know what I've got to do next, right? I'm just trying to go with what I feel I need to do. And do I make mistakes all the time, Kathy? I'm only learning like everybody else, but I seem to be getting a little bit better, or my choices are more refined now. So it seems to be it's less confrontational in my head, really.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so another comment I'd like your advice on and your intuition on is that it seems that earlier in our lives, we had these big wave, like everything's a wave form or a particle, right? Before it becomes a particle, someone sees it, it becomes a particle. Anyway, but the waveform goes way up and then goes way down and way up and way down. It seems that now you can ride a wave that's more like a dolphin swimming. Are you seeing that too? And is that what you're saying when you check in? You pause, check in, rather than the triggered response is, you pause, check in, and then you can find the waveform. Is that?
Yeah, I think because I work with heart rate variability biofeedback, the heart math system,
right?
Because when they were starting off, I was starting off my PhD, and coincidentally, we're in the same fields of study, and I've sort of crisscrossed with heart math all this time, really.
Yeah.
And what I do is from their breathing methodology, I've also shown, this is part of my PhD, that the way we breathe and the quality of our breathing and the quantity. So 6 breaths per minute seems to be the point at which this neutral point arises. I'm just saying that. But if you just breathe in at 6 breaths per minute, you have to train yourself to get down to that. Breathe in a positive emotional feeling where your heart opens. What that actually does is send signals back to your brain. Your brain then comes down from what's called a beta frantic state into this alpha theta state. The alpha theta state to me is that zone of neutrality where you're not being bombarded from one side of your head to the other. You're in both, and it's like a both and situation rather than either or. It becomes both and I think that that's the true collaboration and the sacred union of the masculine and feminine. And I think in that point there, that horizontal point, a sort of portal opens and it takes you to the next stage of expansion of consciousness. So just to go back to what you said, I don't know if go on, you'll have to stop me, but just to get to that point, I think, yeah, surfing's become easier because you can feel the disturbance coming from further away. So it's mindfulness really. And I think you get more expanded space to see further into the distance really.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so I have another question about the change we're in right now and the change from patriarchy to more equal benefit for all. Are you seeing a lot more stress in adult males than you are in females? Or are you seeing a lot more desire to talk to you as an example of how to do it? Because we are in this transition time and there aren't very many role models that men will have to how to be balanced. Because we weren't taught, I wasn't taught how to be a balanced female. You weren't taught how to be a balanced male. Could you talk about, because you deal with stress and all this change and mental and physical health, could you talk a little bit about that, about men's role?
Yeah, I think you said it before. It's got to start from the ground up and from inside out, really. And so what I tend to do is, my job is not to tell them what to do. It's to help them to reconnect with their own intuition and allow that to guide them. Because otherwise they become dependent on me. They'll phone me up to say, what do I do here? And this, that, and the other. The only measure I'm suggesting to people is that they need to choose when they're in a state of emotional calm. And people say to me, so I describe myself as gay from the waist up, and I think that, the top half of me is very feminine and very sensitive and very artistic. But the bottom half of me is male and it still works like a male, So I think in some sort of a way, I've come to that point in me, right, where I'm comfortable in my own skin, right, no matter what I'm doing, really, most of the time. Not all like this, but most of the time I'm like that. But I think that men's groups are a good idea, but they need somebody to lead the group who's been through the process. Otherwise it can be very distracting and they go off and talk about sex and all this business. It's got to be really a whole sort of a balanced approach, really. And I had to admit, at 38 years of age, Kathy, I'm still afraid of the dark, and I had to have a light on going to sleep and all this. And when I share these things, people sometimes come to me afterwards and says, I'm like that. Well, when someone says that, they've got some identification, and we're not all doing that macho thing and down the gym and look, I've got a 10-pack. I'm happy with the 1-pack that I've got, really. Right. And if it can become a 2-pack, I'm making progress,
Oh, I love it. I love it. And it's a 8-pack, I thought, or a 6-pack. Oh my goodness, 10-pack. Scary, scary, scary. So what you're saying is that you show up as an authentic example of someone who's consciously trying to connect the dots on both sides of your essence and just being honest and true about it. And then you're inspiring other people to do that as well.
Well, I think I'm not consciously trying to do it. I'm consciously trying to get out of the way to let it happen.
Oh, I see.
See, I think
Oh, cool.
that's the biggest thing. I don't think I'm doing it. I think I'm being done to, right? And I think,
Okay.
it's a balance, isn't it? We were talking about before about condensation, not or compression, right? I think there's a balance between gravity on the one hand and levity on the other, because levity is lightheartedness, but there are times when we need to be grave and responsible. So it's got to be a balance, really, and that's what Tai Chi is, isn't it, really? Yin and yang. But it's about breath, it's about movements, but it's about no resistance to the flow, really. It's Taoism. I think it's Taoism in motion, really.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Okay, so as far as this time period, the recommendation that you might have, if you were in a classroom right now and we're in a soul illumination classroom, do you have a recommendation that you would like to share for people? Because as you said, there may be a lot of peeling away of what we thought we were to get to the true essence of our love, showing up as love in this reality. Do you have any, as a closing idea, do you have a recommendation for people?
Yeah, I would say if your head's battered and you really don't know what to do and you've come to the end of your tether, sit down quietly, put some music on that you feel quite relaxed with. Put your hand on your heart and your other hand on top of that one, and almost like snuggle in. It's only a technique. Snuggle in and just imagine that you're breathing a nice, warm, gentle feeling from your palms of your hand. So it's in, 2, 3, 4, 5. Collect all the nonsense that's going on inside. And as you breathe out, just let all that nonsense escape and go back. I'm going to say something rude here, but it's breathe in the light and breathe out the shite, basically. And that's a Dr. Joeism. So as you breathe in, you're collecting all the stuff that's playing on your mind. My phrase is, if there's something playing on your mind, best get it off your chest, really. And so if you've got an opportunity, go and look out for mindful breathing, mindfulness, and movement as well, because this is really all about keep moving, but keep moving in a positive direction with your heart open. That's all I can say, really, is. And what you're looking for is not out there. It's not in books and it's not in videos and this, that, and the other. I would suggest that if anybody's given you information, it should only be one thing, that what you're looking for is already in there, Otherwise, you'll be paying them $80 a consultation session or even more, and you'll have to go back to them 10 times, 12 times, and all that. I did that. I went through that process. It cost me a fortune. And I realized, really, that there's something much more powerful, much more wise, and it sits deep within us. I don't know whether that's made any sense, but it's already in you, and you don't have to learn anything or get your head around anything. You just have to let go of everything, and then it will overtake you in a positive way.
Right. And trust that this is temporary and that everything's here to help you go through this time with the highest good in mind, even though it doesn't look like the highest good at the time.
Yeah.
Because in hindsight, do we always come up with that?
Yeah, they say, don't they, it'll be all right in the end. And if it's not all right, it's not the end. So there's always that, and sometimes it's 10 steps forward, 12 steps back, but I think if you get back in touch with your heart and in your soul, because I see the gates of the heart open and then the soul pops up to say, thank God for that. I've been trying to tell you for years. Why don't you pay? So in my mind, I have like a little Yoda, you know what I mean? I go into a little cavern and I go down, because I like all that stuff, down this sandy thing and through a cave. And there's like a font, or a fountain of knowledge. And I've got me little Yoda there. And I go and sit next to him and he'll say, how are you getting on, son? And I'll say, well, this is bothering me. This is bothering me. And we have a conversation, And you see, I've got a thing going up my spine now as I'm talking about it. That's what works for me. So you have to sort of develop your own place. It could be sitting on a park bench in lovely grassy. whatever works for you, where you're actually talking and connecting with the deepest part of your intelligence. I feel it's that simple, but that's the way forward, really.
Okay.
Keep it simple, really. It's already within you.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you so much. What is the best way for people to get a hold of you and to enjoy more of your wisdom?
Well, I'd say to them at the moment is I have a YouTube channel. It's called Getting Real with Dr. Joe. And there's quite a few videos on there, you know, and I basically talk the same old nonsense. But there's other stuff as well, because I work with scientists, but I also work with people who use crystals. I work with people, in fact, I do grid work myself. I've been down to Glastonbury a few times and I just end up there, you know, doing stuff, you know. So it's have a look at there, see if any of the videos sort of resonate with you. But I'm that tied up, Kathy, as I was saying before we came on. I'm that tied up with me sort of university work. I'm not touting for business really, so I don't unfortunately have any time to do one-to-one stuff, and I hardly ever get an opportunity to answer things. So, you know, don't think I'm being rude. It's just that I'm trying to manage my own energy, really. You know.
Well, I appreciate, because what you're doing is you're sharing yourself on YouTube, which is free and available for everyone. So this isn't out of reach for it. All they have to know is know about you, enjoy your sense of humor, and then start their own journey with you. So thank you so much. Thank you. I'm so blessed to know you. And this was just wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And thanks for asking me. And nice to see you again.
Yeah.
And I'll
Thank
speak to you
you.
hopefully whenever we're supposed to in the future.